but waiting for an interpreter to show up on scene, do you think there's a dynamic that says, the police has like 2 minutes to solve the issue versus wait for the interpreter to come in? Is there some dynamics like this or no?
Yeah, I think, I mean, if a situation is developing in a few minutes, then obviously the police has to do what they can, and it's not always realistic to get anyone on the scene, not even an
Probably they're
ambulance.
thinking there's a life at stake here, the toddler's life at stake.
Yeah, and so I understand that. My understanding is that it happened over a long period of time, and many calls for sure were made back and forth. Should we do this? Bring in another officer. Lots of conversations happened,
Oh, I
but
see, I
that
see.
interpreting conversation did not even happen as far as the information that I have read. And I'm like, this
Mhm.
interpreting conversation should have happened. I'm not saying you could get an interpreter in time. I'm not saying everything would have been rosy, but I wish RCMP, and I do want to get in touch with them. Like Civic wants to get in touch with them and be like, does the RCMP not understand the value of interpreters in crisis situations? Is that not something that even
Yeah, I
crosses
do
your
believe, though, you bring up a very valid point. I mean, as an association, the Canadian Language Industry Association should have that conversation at a national level.
Mhm.
Not necessarily, you can have your conversation, obviously, on the British Columbia detachments, but in national sense, this should be a national conversation with what we call in Canada the RCMP, which to the US that would be the federal agencies, whatever they are. For us, it's the federal policing, if you will, and they should have those conversations, if nothing else, from an awareness and education perspective, because this situation. I'm assuming, and you're probably more aware of this than I am, you're the interpreter that goes into the field that sees these situations. It's not unique. With all unfortunate in place here, unfortunately, this is not unique situation. It happens more than we think about it sometimes. This one hit the news. I'm not sure if all of them hit the news.
Yeah, absolutely. And as far as this one hit the news, because it was a very dramatic story that ended in a death of a young woman, a young mother. But this kind of issues of just not having an awareness of the importance of interpreters in crisis situations, whether or not someone dies at the end, that's like the extreme, like the absolute extreme. But like in between, when there is some kind of major investigation, or there's a sexual assault or something happening in the middle of the night, and it involves someone who does not speak the language, we would like our institutions in Canada to be aware that it is very important that that person has an interpreter, and that it goes beyond the kind of hard communication that maybe Google Translate can give you in an emergency. It's more than that. It's about that person feeling heard, feeling like they can communicate. It can be key in emergency situations, and I wish there was more awareness of how important that is.
So I was going to ask you, like, before we dive into the other topics, is this the STIBC? I want to say message that you want to send out is that entire, availability of interpreters for those type of situation and don't rely on technology. Is this or am I paraphrasing too much of your letter here? So I'll
No,
leave it up to you.
yeah, I think that is absolutely the message we would like to send. Remember that they're in-person interpreters that you can bring to crisis situations. And please remember that it is very important that they're there. It's not an afterthought. It's not a nice to have if we have all the time in the world. It can really make a difference, as in this case, perhaps between life and death.